Good night. Have one time tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma J. Spirit Divine. You get word on tonight. And the topic gonna be Messiah and Ephraim. That's Jacob, that's Joseph two sons. So the beloved part that Joseph and the family, Egypt and Canaan, so they ran out of food and they sold their body to exchange, for food. They had no more money. Their money ran out. Their livestock had all the animals ran out because they had to sell all that. So they have no more money, no more livestock. To help them with their exchange for the food. All they had left was their body and their land, and that's how they had become to be slave under Pharaoh. But today lesson, besides Joseph's two sons, Jacob wants to bless them, and they're gonna be a little mix up, with the blessing because Jacob wants to bless the youngest child, but Joseph wants him to bless the oldest child. So the story gonna come from Genesis 48, 1 to 22. Now later, they told Joseph his father is ill. So now Jacob is sick. So he took both of his kids. So Jacob never saw his kids yet. He just not seen Joseph after 20 something years. So it's gonna be a blessing for him to spend time with Joseph and also see his grandkids before he died. So he took both of his kids along with him to see their father, to see his father. So Joseph arrived, and Jacob is weak. You know, Jacob's is weak, but he sat up in the bed, and Jacob had said to Joseph, God Almighty. God Almighty appeared to him, in the land of Canaan, and blessed him. God just kept on blessing Jacob, and he said God will make him fruitful and increase his offspring, in numbers. He said, God said, I'm going to make you fruitful and increase in numbers. He said, God will make a community of the people in a land everlasting possession, to his offspring after him. So after him, God's still going to be taking care of his offspring. So Jacob said, Joseph's two sons, will be his. So Jacob saying, your two sons going to be mine. And then Jacob had told him, and then after those two, and if you have any more, then that's going to be yours. So he said, the two you have right now, that's mine. You just got to have more. So Jacob said Joseph's two sons will be his, and after them is his. So when Jacob saw Joseph's sons, he asked, who are these? Can you remember he weak? His eyes is failing him, so he's only can see a little bit, So that's why when they did came, he asked, who are they? So they are the sons that God had given him, and now Jacob wants to bless Joseph's two sons. Remember, this is the first time seeing Joseph's sons. He ain't saw his own son, Joseph in 20-something years. So Jacob's eyes was failing due to old age. And he could hardly see. Now Joseph had to bring his sons close to him because he couldn't hardly see them. Jacob kissed them and he embraced them, his grandkids, first grandkids. So now Jacob thought he'll never was going to be able to see his son Joseph because he saw his son was dead. He mourned for Joseph for so many years. And not only to see a lost son, but now he able to see two grandkids. He never thought he was going to see his son Joseph, but then now he's seeing his son Joseph and he's seeing two grandkids. So Joseph wanted him, to bless, so Jacob wanted to bless Joseph's sons, but put his hand on the youngest son, and then Joseph moved his hand. Joseph moved his hand because see, Joseph figured, I need you to bless the older child, the firstborn. But Jacob gonna refuse. He's gonna like, no, I know what I'm doing. I want to bless the youngest child because when God appeared to me, God said the youngest child gonna be great. He gonna be so great. So that means that God wanted him to bless the youngest child. So Joseph wanted him to bless the oldest child, the firstborn. But then he blessed Joseph. He blessed Joseph, and Jacob said, God, who had been my shepherd. He said God had been his shepherd, and God been in his life a long time. Since he ran from Esau, he was by his uncle house. God was still protecting him. God was still guiding him. When Laban was messing over him, God was right there. God had told Laban, you better watch with the words that you said to Jacob. God had his back. Because Jacob was part of God's plan. You know, so so he said God was my shepherd all my life, and God was. God was his shepherd. God was protecting him his whole life, even when he was running. You know, to this day, the angel who had delivered me from all harm. Remember we were wrestling with the angel, and Jacob, he went through something too. He went through something too. That's why God kept on blessing him. So now Jacob ready to bless Joseph's two sons. He ready to bless Joseph's two sons. Made it increase greatly, on the earth. So Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on the youngest son, putting it on his head, and so Joseph said he was displeased. Joseph said he was displeased, so he moved his hand. He took his hand off of his father. He took hold of his father's hand to move it from the youngest child head and to put it on the oldest child head. But his father refused, and he said, I know my son, he will become great. The youngest son will be greater, than the oldest son. Will become a group of a nation. That's what God had told him. When he said God appeared to him, that's what God had appeared to him and had told him that younger child, the one gonna be great. He gonna be a group of a nation. A group of a nation. So Jacob blessed both sons that same day. He blessed both of them that same day. So Jacob blessed, the youngest son first. Bless him first. And then Jacob told Joseph, he about to die, but he telling Joseph that God would be with him. So Jacob said, I'm about to die soon, but God had appeared to me. And God said, he gonna be with you. He gonna be with you. God already was with Joseph. So telling Joseph that God gonna be with him and take him back to the land of your father. And Joseph not gonna make it, but his offspring, they're gonna conquer their land that God is giving them. So Jacob giving him one more land, then to your brothers. And we see that Jacob's about to die. And he wanted to bless Joseph and his two sons. Because he haven't had seen Joseph in 20-some years. And then he got two children. So it was a blessing. He died in peace. So he wanted, to bless Joseph's youngest son first. But Joseph said, no, bless his first son. But Jacob refused and wanted to bless the youngest son anyway. So it was a mix-up with the blessing. Jacob wanted to bless the youngest son. Joseph wanted him to bless the oldest son. So for 4 generations, the youngest brother, we're going to see how the generation went. And see, this is how God works. Once you do something, that's how God do it. Just like Sarah, she took her slave to have sex with Abraham. That's why all the Israelites had to be slaves. That's why God had that famine so severe like that. So where they won't have none of church but to sell themselves, to be enslaved. Because that was God's whole plan. They had to be enslaved. And God was going to rescue them. So we're going to see how the generation went on, blessing blessing of brothers. For the fourth generation, the younger brother had received the family blessing. So we got Isaac. Isaac was blessed rather than Asmir. That was Abraham. Abraham's first son. And see how they skip over the first son and went to the last son, Isaac. Second we have Jacob got blessed rather than Esau. Esau was the oldest. They're twins, but Esau came out first. And Jacob was the youngest. So we're seeing how this generation is going. And then you have three. You have Joseph. Joseph got blessed rather than Reuben. Reuben is the oldest son. He was Jacob's oldest son from Leah. And then four, Ephraim got blessed rather than Messiah. And Messiah is the oldest son. So we see how the generation, the fourth generation had went down. The youngest one got blessed first before the oldest child. So in this way, God remind his people that remnants on custom does not force God's hand. God do how he wanted to. God said, I want to bless the youngest one first. That's how he gonna do it. If I want the Israelites to be a slave, that's what I'm gonna do. God do things on his way and his turn. Instead, he will choose whom he will and offer his choice is the individual that we human would not have selected. And that's what a lot of people get mad when God chose someone. Because God would choose someone who everybody else would not select. That's just like when God had chose Saul, they were looking at the appearance, but God don't look at the appearance. And just like when God had chose David was a little boy. So he told Solomon to go and anoint him. He said, don't look at the size, don't look at the appearance. You're gonna anoint that boy at 17 years old. So God will choose someone that no one else will select. So blessing is not a right, but a privilege, just as grace isn't granted. But because of God extended love. God love all of us. But he has all of us have different gifts. All of us have different plans. Just like he had a plan for Abraham family, Abraham offspring. Generation to generation, they all were God chosen people. They all were God chosen people, and God took care of them. God took care of them. So we see that Jacob gives the youngest child blessing instead of the oldest child. The greater blessing is when Joseph objected that Jacob refused to listen, because God had told him that Abraham, would become greater. That's what God told him. And God often worked in unexpected ways. He always goes deeper than what we may expect. God can use you to carry out his plan even if you don't think you have all the qualifications. And that's how God do. God will use an unexpected person, with no qualification. But God will put that just like Joseph. Joseph never did none of that work before. But God put him in charge because God gave him the wisdom and give him the knowledge to do what God had wanted him to do. And so a lot of time, God will select, people that no one else select. God will give you high, position that you're not qualified for. But you'll still be able to do it because God's spirit will be upon you and God will give you the knowledge to do what he needs you to do. So don't be scared. Because see, God go high. God go high. He give you that high. He give you the high standards. And don't be scared and be like, oh, I can't do it. This too big for me. You know, ain't nothing too big for God. If God said he picked you to do certain things, you know, in God's mind, he knows you can do it. Because God will believe you when nobody else don't believe in you. You know, so when God believes in you, we got to believe in ourselves. You know, we got to believe that we can do it. You know, Joseph asked no question. Joseph had got a high position, you know, and Joseph just got there and started doing it. You know, he ain't had no qualification for that. He ain't go to school for that. Remember, he was in prison, you know, but he did an excellent job. You know, when that famine came, he just hurried up and jumped to being in charge. You know, coming together with all kinds of pieces, putting pieces together. You know, he did everything he was supposed to do. He helped them to a point which they had nothing else but to sell their body, and that was all part of God's plan. Kept that family so severe, but they had no choice but to sell their body to be enslaved, because that was the part of God's plan. They had to be enslaved. You know, they had to be enslaved. You know, so we see the two brothers said God bless, but it was a little battlefield, it was a little confusion, you know, because Jacob wanted to bless the youngest child, but Joseph wanted the oldest child blessed. But you know, they had to go down the generation. God had appeared to Jacob and told him the youngest child gonna be greater with a group of a nation. You know, so he had to fight a God lead and bless that youngest child. You know, and we see that's a generation that went on. You know, when Esau was supposed to get blessed, it was meant for Jacob to steal it. You know, because Jacob was the one really supposed to get the blessing, and he got it. You know, see, a lot of time horrible things would happen, but a lot of time it be all part of God's plan. Joseph was meant to get that. Jacob was meant to get that blessing than Esau. You know, and we see Isaac got the blessing over Abraham, oldest child, skip all over the oldest child and went straight to Isaac. You know, so we see they had four generations that went down with blessing that the oldest child did not get, but the youngest child did. You know, we see that Jacob was part of God's plan, but he got old, but God still used his offspring. You know, so just all the word I have for you on today. You know, the Israelite, Jacob, Joseph brothers, you know, they had become to be the Israelite. They had become to sell their bodies to be a slave and to be in bondage under Pharaoh. And they don't realize this gonna be their worst nightmare, but then they will have victory at the end. You know, because that's when they're gonna be getting beaten, hard slave, and everything else. So they're gonna start calling out to God, and God gonna rescue them in His own due time. You know, so that's all the word I have for y'all tonight. Y'all have a blessed night, and I see y'all in the next video.